Hi, everyone. My name is Marie Bustos. I am your Central Texas family law attorney. I am based out of Austin, Texas, but I serve all of the counties in Central Texas. Me and my firm, we help families transition through difficult times and onto their way to a brighter future. And with me, I have Amy Adler. Amy.
Hi, everybody. Adler. I'm a CPA. I'm a certified fraud examiner and also a certified divorce financial analyst and a two-time divorcee. And I'm passionate about helping people through the process so that they can be armed with the important information and have the best support so that they can make the best possible decisions for themselves and their families as they begin their new lives.
So Amy and I are going to be answering some common questions that we hear from family, friends, clients, people who are just on the internet screaming into the abyss about divorce. We're gonna be doing a series of these videos so that we can hopefully answer some of your basic questions and give you more information. So today, our first question is, help. I am sick of my spouse and I need a divorce. What's the first thing I should do from a legal and financial perspective if I think I want to divorce my spouse? So Amy, what do you think should happen first with finances?
So this is a great question because I get this question a lot from people who are friends and also potential clients who just really need to know information about what to do. But I also give the exact same advice to people that I'm working with on the front end of a marriage. So if they're just getting married or if they're even young adults who are just getting started in life, because the advice is the same.
Good advice is good advice.
Right? Right? I wish that somebody had told me that when I graduated college and got my first know where all of your finances are, but that's true. It's really, really important. And it's so easy for us to bury our heads in the sand too, especially if our spouse is super organized and likes to keep control of all of it. It's nice for us to feel comfortable that it's taken care of. But the truth of the matter is that whether your marriage ends in death or divorce, you're going to be in the same situation and you're going to need to know the information for all of your financial records. That includes everything that you and your spouse have, if it's an asset or a debt. So that includes things like bank accounts, savings accounts, retirement accounts, cars, house, mortgage. There are all kinds of assets that you may have acquired throughout the course of your marriage, and even sometimes before your marriage that may need to be considered in the process. So it's really, really important to make sure that you know where all of those things are. And getting access to the statements, most recent statements for all of those accounts is valuable. And also making sure that you have access to usernames and passwords for those accounts online is super valuable. The reason all of that is so important is because by the time you tell your spouse that you want a divorce, you're a lot less likely to get that information from them, especially the things that they have control over. So because they're hurt, because they're angry, they're not going to want to give you that information in a lot of cases. So if you have it all together, it can save you a lot of time and money by just having that documentation together. Because once you get into the divorce process and have to start having attorneys requesting documents back and forth, it does get to be very expensive. So if you have it all up front, it's really helpful. And the ways that I recommend people do that are start by looking at tax returns from the past few years. You can actually get a lot of information about the interest you've received or investments that have had gains or losses, things like that, bonuses, stocks, things like that, retirement plans. You can get a lot of that information from W-2s and 1099s from your tax returns. And then even better is to run your own and your spouse's credit reports so that you can gather all of the information about all of the debts that are outstanding.
And credit reports are huge in divorce cases. I encourage my clients to get a credit report every single case, every single client, because sometimes there's things on there that clients don't know about or they forgot. And sometimes you can catch fraud or your spouse finding something, sneaking something on there that you didn't know. They're so important in this process.
Absolutely. I mean, you should run your credit report on a regular basis anyway to make sure that there's nothing on there that shouldn't be. But for a divorce purpose, you know, as close as possible to the time frame that you're going to start going through the divorce process. It's a good idea to run it so you can see what all of the debts are that are outstanding, and have a good compilation. And then you make sure you have access to statements for all of those accounts so that you can keep up to date and keep it all included when you start gathering all of that information once you reach out to an attorney like Lisa. So Lisa, what do you think? What's the first thing you would recommend?
So the gathering financial information is so crucial to the divorce process. But from a legal perspective, one of the things that I like to ask my clients in our very first meeting is, what are your goals? What do you want? Other than the obvious goal of not wanting to be married to your spouse anymore, there are questions that lead to more questions sometimes. So do you have children? If you have children, what are their needs? Do those children maybe go to private school? Maybe they have special needs beyond what their school is providing for. Maybe they're in extracurricular activities. They're in sports, and maybe they play club baseball. Who are your children going to live with? What's visitation going to look like? Sometimes clients will have answers that may work in the next 6 months, but won't work over the next 6 years. Children grow, families change, all of those things happen. And, you know, circling back to the property perspective, if you have property, what kind of property do you have? We talked a little bit about people not necessarily remembering all the debts that they have and what they have on their credit report, but they have, people don't always remember what they have for property. They'll say, oh, I have this case where we're really just talking about dividing 2 pieces of property. And then when we ask more questions, it turns out that you're dividing something a lot different.
That happens all the time. Yeah. Especially when like a spouse has changed jobs and they didn't roll over their 401k to the next one. And so there's all these outstanding accounts out there that they didn't even think about.
Absolutely. Or people don't realize, sometimes people don't realize that they need to report their property to the other spouse for the legal purpose of getting divorced. They'll say, oh, well, it was just in my name. I didn't know that I had to, tell my spouse about this car that I had or this 401k that I had. If you don't identify your property during a divorce and your spouse accuses you of hiding that property, they can go back to a judge later and request that that property be divided completely to them or awarded completely to them. So that's those are pretty big consequences, which makes Amy's advice so much more valuable. But also, when you're thinking about your goals and what you have, I like to try to determine what my client's value is. What are their values? What do they feel is going to be most important to them? Amy and I shared a client recently that worked with both of us, and she and her husband had different assets that had different market values, but they also had different market stability. One was real estate, and one piece of property was real estate, and it was far more stable. The other asset was, thrived in boom markets and did not so great in bust markets. So her value overall, when at the very first meeting in her case, she said, I want to feel financially stable after this divorce. And when we devised our tactics and our strategies for negotiations and for her divorce, we went after property that was going to be stable. And maybe she was walking away for something that would do absolutely amazing in that boom market, but come around to a bust market, it was almost valueless or less than valueless. So I will say she was very grateful at the end to achieve her goals. And it was really helpful to know what those goals were before she, at the very beginning steps of her divorce. So Amy, do you have anything that you think, that you think clients should be looking for as far as their goals?
So the word budget comes to mind when you're talking about all of that. Of course, from the financial perspective, it's like thinking
of achieve those goals.
Yeah, what your budget's going to look like in the future is a big part of the goal setting process. Now, this is a really cumbersome and large, kind of overwhelming task for a lot of people. So we'll do another video on this topic later, but I do think it's worth
absolutely.
that creating a budget of what your income and what your expenses you think that they'll look like after the divorce can be a really valuable exercise, so that you know how to negotiate or know what things you need in terms of negotiating out of the estate, out of your marital estate.
And I think that, you know, when we get to the budget series and the budget video in the series, we'll have a lot more to say about that. But that will help with things like child support, if there's going to be spousal support of any kind, or if, you know, your budget is looking a certain way, but you don't think that your spouse will reliably pay spousal support. You don't want to be dependent on him or her after your divorce. Maybe we determine our strategy to go after different types of property so that you can make sure that you don't rely on your spouse after your divorce. It's a clean break, so to speak.
I love it.
So I think that wraps up our question for today. I want to thank all of you for joining us. And I really, really want to, you know, if you ever have questions, you know, in watching these videos, please comment below and maybe we'll make a video about that question. And, you know, if you found this video helpful, please find us on our social media channels. My name's Lisa Bustos.
And I'm Amy Adler. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.